A glass of whiskey trembles in a man's hand. His reflection in the dark window fractures with each raindrop. Across the street, a woman in a tailored suit holds a child's hand. They disappear into a building he owns but can no longer control. He told her 7 years ago, "It's not mine. I'm sterile." She never argued. She just vanished. Now she's back. Not broken, not begging. Powerful. And the boy beside her has his eyes. His family told him the truth was impossible. But what if the lie wasn't hers? What if the cruelty he built his empire on was built on a foundation that never existed? What do you owe someone you destroyed when you were the one who was deceived? Kang Tae-ryung stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the glass. Below, Seoul's nightscape glittered like scattered diamonds on black velvet. A city that answered to him in whispers and wire transfers. His empire wasn't built on visibility. It thrived in shadows, in contracts signed with invisible ink, in debts collected through fear rather than courts. But tonight, the city felt different. Hostile. His phone buzzed. A single message from his head of intelligence. Haesong Industries just acquired controlling shares in 3 of our shell companies. Clean transactions, no red flags. She's good. Tae-ryung's jaw tightened. For 7 years, he'd convinced himself that Yoon Hae-won was a ghost. A mistake he'd corrected with brutal efficiency. When she'd stood in his private study, trembling and pale, her hands protective over a belly that barely showed, he'd delivered his verdict without hesitation. "I'm sterile, Hae-won. That child isn't mine. I don't know who you've been with, but it wasn't me." He'd watched her face crumble. Watched hope die in her eyes like a candle snuffed between fingers. She hadn't cried. Hadn't screamed. She'd simply nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less, and walked out of his life with the kind of dignity that haunted him more than any plea could have. His family had been relieved. His father, Kang Myung-dae, patriarch of the Kang Syndicate, had clapped him on the shoulder. "You did the right thing. A child would make you vulnerable, weak. This is why we prepared you, why we made sure you understood your condition." Tae-ryung had believed them. The medical reports had been thorough. Childhood fever, permanent damage, 0 sperm count. He'd seen the documents himself, stamped, certified, irrefutable. So why, 7 years later, did the name Yoon Hae-won appear on every financial report crossing his desk? And why did his intelligence network whisper about a boy? A child with black hair and a face that surveillance photos captured in unsettling familiarity. Boss. His second-in-command, Choi Sung-min, entered without knocking, a privilege earned through 15 years of loyalty. The acquisition meeting is confirmed for tomorrow. Haesong Industries requested neutral ground, the Shilla Hotel, executive suite. She requested it? Tae-ryung turned, his expression carved from stone. Sang-min nodded. Her assistant was very specific. No weapons, no additional security beyond 2 personal guards each. She wants to talk business, not war. Hae-won doesn't do anything without 3 layers of strategy. Tae-ryung moved to his desk, where a file lay open. Haesong Industries' meteoric rise over the past 4 years. Revenue charts that climbed like cliff faces. Partnerships with conglomerates his family had spent decades courting. And at the center of it all, a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. From less than nothing. From abandonment. What do we know about the boy? The question escaped before he could stop it. Sang-min's expression flickered. Surprise, then careful neutrality. Kang Ji-hwan, 7 years old. Enrolled in an international school under maximum privacy protocols. No father listed on any registration documents. Medical records are sealed. The kid's a ghost, just like his mother was for 5 years. Kang Ji-hwan. The surname was a blade between Tae-ryung's ribs. She'd given the child his family name, not as a plea for recognition, but as a challenge, a declaration. Run a genetic comparison. The words felt like swallowing glass. Discreetly. Sang-min hesitated. "Boss, if your family finds out, they won't." Tae-ryung's voice dropped to permafrost. "This stays between us. I need to know." Because the alternative, that he'd destroyed Hae-won based on a truth that wasn't true, was a weight his conscience couldn't carry. Not anymore. The Shilla Hotel's executive suite was designed for kings and killers. Tae-ryong arrived 10 minutes early, his 2 guards flanking him like shadows. The room smelled of leather and imported orchids. Neutral ground, indeed. When the door opened, time became elastic. Yoon Hae-won entered first, and Tae-ryong's breath caught despite 7 years of training himself not to feel. She'd changed. The soft edges of the woman he'd known had been replaced by sharp lines, tailored Chanel suit in midnight blue, hair pulled into a severe bun, heels that clicked against marble like a countdown. Her face was porcelain smooth, makeup minimal, expression unreadable. But her eyes, God, her eyes were still the same. Dark and fathomless, holding universes he'd never been allowed to explore. Behind her, a small figure emerged, Kang Ji-hwan. The boy was 7 years of inevitability, black hair that fell across his forehead in the same stubborn way Tae-ryong's did. A face still soft with childhood, but already showing the bone structure that would one day be sharp enough to cut. And eyes. Jesus Christ, those eyes. The exact shade of amber brown that Tae-ryong saw in the mirror every morning. The boy looked at him with open curiosity. No recognition, no fear. Just the frank assessment of a child encountering a stranger. Tae-ryong felt something crack inside his chest, a fault line he hadn't known existed. Mr. Kang. Hae-won's voice was silk over steel. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Ms. Yoon. He forced his gaze away from the boy, back to her. Your acquisition strategy has been aggressive. Efficient, she corrected, settling into the chair across from him with the kind of grace that came from surviving hell and learning to dance in the flames. I don't believe in wasting time. Ji-hwan climbed into the chair beside his mother, swinging his legs. A tablet appeared in his small hands, something to keep him occupied while the adults talked. But Tae-ryong caught the way the boy's eyes flickered up, watching, absorbing. Smart. Too smart. You're dismantling my family's financial infrastructure piece by piece, Tae-ryong said, keeping his voice level. That's not business. That's war. Hae-won smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. War implies 2 sides fighting for dominance. This is just correction. I'm taking back what should have been mine 7 years ago. And what's that? Respect. The word was a scalpel. Acknowledgement. The right to exist without being called a liar. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Tae-ryong's guards shifted uncomfortably. Sang-min's hand moved imperceptibly toward his concealed weapon. Not a threat, just readiness. But Hae-won didn't flinch. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers laced together like a prayer or a trap. I'm not here to negotiate peace, Mr. Kang. I'm here to offer you a choice. You can continue fighting me, bleeding resources and reputation until your family's empire crumbles from within. Or, his voice was barely above a whisper. Or you can acknowledge the truth. Her gaze flicked to Ji-hwan, then back to Tae-ryong. All of it. The boy looked up from his tablet at that moment, as if sensing the shift in the room's gravity. His eyes, those impossible eyes, locked onto Tae-ryong's face. And for 3 heartbeats, the world held its breath. Yoma, Ji-hwan said softly, tugging at Hae-won's sleeve. Is this the man you told me about? The one who made a mistake? Tae-ryong's lungs forgot how to function. Hae-won's expression softened infinitesimally as she looked at her son. A crack in the armor she'd built so meticulously. Yes, sweetheart. This is him. The one who didn't know he could be a dad? Every word was a bullet. Clean entry, devastating exit wound. Tae-ryong's hands gripped the armrests of his chair hard enough to leave imprints. What are you talking about? Hae-won stood, smoothing her suit with deliberate calm. I think we're done here for today. My lawyers will send over the preliminary merger documents tomorrow. You have 72 hours to decide whether you want to fight or listen. Hae-won... She was already moving toward the door, Ji-hwan's small hand tucked safely in hers. But at the threshold she paused, turned, and the look she gave him was carved from years of survival and something sharper than rage. You destroyed me because you believed you were broken, she said quietly. But you were never sterile, Tae-ryong. You were just lied to. The door closed behind them with a soft click that echoed like thunder. Tae-ryong sat in the silence that followed, his mind fracturing into 1,000 contradictions. Sang-min was speaking. Something about security protocols, about running the genetic test faster, but the words were distant, muffled, meaningless. You were never sterile. His family's voices echoed through memory. You did the right thing. A child would make you weak. We protected you, protected or imprisoned. And somewhere in Seoul's glittering darkness, a woman who should have been destroyed was instead dismantling his world with the precision of someone who'd learned how to build kingdoms from ash. While a 7-year-old boy with his eyes called another man's rejection a mistake, as if forgiveness were even possible, Tae-ryong didn't sleep. Sleep required the absence of thought, and his mind was a war zone. Every memory a landmine, every certainty now suspect. At 3 a.m., he stood in his private study, the same room where he'd delivered his verdict to Haewon 7 years ago. The space hadn't changed. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books that were more decoration than literature, a desk that had witnessed more confessions than any church. On that desk now sat 2 folders. The first, Haeshong Industries' complete dossier. 4 years of meteoric growth, strategic acquisitions, partnerships that read like a revenge roadmap. Haewon hadn't just survived his rejection, she'd weaponized it. Every company she'd absorbed, every deal she'd closed, had been a calculated step toward this moment. The second folder was thinner, more dangerous. Sangmin had delivered it an hour ago with hands that trembled imperceptibly, a rare display of emotion from a man who'd helped bury bodies without blinking. Inside, preliminary genetic markers from a discarded juice box Ji-hwan had left at the hotel. Incomplete data, but enough to make Tae-ryong's hands shake. Probability of paternity, 99.7%. The number was a guillotine. He'd had a son for 7 years, a child who'd learned to walk, to speak, to read, all without him. A boy who carried his DNA, his family's legacy, his eyes, and believed his father's absence was just a mistake someone made. Tae-ryong's phone buzzed, a video message from an unknown number. He opened it with the instinct of a man who'd learned to expect ambushes. The footage was amateur, clearly taken by a child's unsteady hand. It showed a small apartment, modest but warm, filled with secondhand furniture and crayon drawings taped to walls. A woman's voice, Haewon's voice, came from off-screen. Ji-hwan, what are you doing? The camera spun, revealing the boy's face. Wide grin, missing front tooth. Making a movie for school. We have to show our favorite place. And this is your favorite place? Yeah, because you're here, Iyama, and because we're safe. The video cut to black. But not before Tae-ryong saw Haewon's shadow in the background, her shoulders curved inward as if protecting herself from an invisible blow. We're safe. The implication was a knife. Safe from him. Safe from his world. Safe from the man who'd called her a liar and threw her into a storm with nothing but her pride to keep her warm. A second message appeared. This is what you rejected, Mr. Kang. Not a scandal, not a weakness, a family. No signature, no threat, just truth, delivered with surgical precision. Tae-ryong's family home was a fortress disguised as a traditional Hanak estate. High walls, surveillance systems hidden behind centuries-old architecture, guards who looked like gardeners but moved like soldiers. He arrived at dawn, when the compound was quiet save for the soft rustle of wind through pine trees. His father, Kang Mayong-dae, was in the study, the same study where every major family decision had been made for 3 generations. The old man sat behind a desk that looked like an altar, reviewing documents with the meticulous attention of someone who believed control was the only form of love. Tae-ryong. Myung-dae didn't look up. You're early. We need to talk about Yoon Haewon. Now his father's eyes lifted, sharp, assessing, already calculating. The CEO causing trouble? What about her? You know exactly who she is. Tae-ryong closed the door behind him, a deliberate act of confrontation. She was here 7 years ago, pregnant. I rejected her because you told me I was sterile. Silence. The kind that precedes earthquakes. Myung-dae set down his pen with careful precision. That was handled appropriately. The woman was trying to trap you into a relationship using a child that couldn't possibly have been yours. Couldn't possibly... Tae-ryong laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Or couldn't be allowed to be mine? His father's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition. Calculation. The look of a man deciding how much truth to release. You want me to apologize for protecting you? As for Myungdae stood, moving to the window with the deliberate movements of a predator, establishing dominance. You were 25, reckless, in love with a woman from nowhere. No family, no connections, no value to this organization. She was a liability. So you lied. The words tasted like poison. You fabricated medical records, hired doctors to confirm a diagnosis that never existed, made me believe I was broken, so I'd break her instead. I made you strong. Myungdae's voice rose, a rare display of emotion. Do you think you'd be where you are now if you'd been distracted by a child? By domestic concerns? You became the youngest boss in our syndicate's history because you were focused, uncompromising, whole. I have a son. Tae-ryung's voice cracked despite his control. A 7-year-old boy who doesn't know I exist, who thinks his father's absence was an accident, not a choice built on your lies. That child is not your responsibility. He has my eyes. The shout echoed through the study, years of suppressed rage finally erupting. My face, my genetic markers. He's mine, and you stole him from me. You stole both of them from me. Myungdae turned, and for the first time in Tae-ryung's memory, his father looked old, tired, almost regretful. I did what I thought was necessary, the old man said quietly. Hae-won was a complication, a weakness. I removed her to protect you. You destroyed her. Tae-ryung stepped closer, each word deliberate. And she survived anyway, built an empire, became everything you tried to prevent. And now she's dismantling ours piece by piece because we gave her every reason to hate us. So what do you want me to say? Myungdae's voice hardened. That I'm sorry?
안녕, 여러분. Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know I didn't tell everything yet. The complete version has 20 full audio episodes. No interruptions, no ads. Just the story, the emotions, and the moments I couldn't fit in here. You scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
That I regret protecting my son from a mistake? I won't apologize for ensuring your success. It wasn't success. Tae-ryung's voice dropped to something colder than anger. It was theft, and I'm the one who has to pay for it. He left without waiting for a response, the door closing behind him with a finality that felt like the end of something irreparable. Hae-won's office at Haeseong Industries was nothing like Tae-ryung expected. He'd imagined cold minimalism, steel and glass, power without warmth. Instead, he found organized chaos, architectural models scattered across tables, design sketches pinned to corkboards, a wall covered in photographs of construction sites and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. And in the center of it all, Hae-won, sleeves rolled up, hair in a messy bun, reviewing blueprints with 3 engineers who looked both terrified and inspired by her intensity. She noticed him before her security did. Her eyes lifted, locked onto his, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, wariness, something else he couldn't name. Gentlemen, she said without breaking eye contact, we'll continue this tomorrow. The engineers scattered. Her head of security, a woman named Park Min-jung, positioned herself near the door, close enough to intervene, far enough to grant the illusion of privacy. Tae-ryung stepped into the office, hands in his pockets to hide their trembling. Nice setup, not what I expected. Because you expected cold ambition? Hae-won moved to her desk, creating physical distance even as they occupied the same room. I build things, Tae-ryung, hospitals, schools, housing for families who've been displaced. That's what I do with the money I take from people like you. People like me. He tested the phrase. You mean criminals? I mean people who value power over humanity. She sat, gestured to the chair across from her. Why are you here? I got your video, of Ji-hwan. Her expression shuddered. That wasn't meant to manipulate you. I know. He sat, the movement feeling like surrender. It wasn't manipulation. It was evidence. Proof of what I destroyed. Hae-won studied him with the same intensity she'd probably used to negotiate billion-won deals. You came here to confess, apologize, because I'm not interested in your guilt, Tae-ryung. I don't need your regret to survive. I already survived. I came to tell you I know the truth. He pulled out a folder, not the genetic test, but copies of the falsified medical records his father's people had created. My family lied about everything. The sterility diagnosis, the impossibility of paternity, all of it was fabricated to keep me focused on the business. He slid the documents across the desk. Hae-won didn't touch them immediately. When she finally did, her hands were steady, but he saw the tension in her jaw, the slight tremor in her fingers as she flipped through pages of deception. "You didn't know," she said finally. Not a question, a realization. I believed them. The admission felt like peeling off skin. "I believed I was broken, so I broke you instead. And I'm..." He stopped, the word catching in his throat. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't." Hae-won closed the folder with careful finality. "There's no fixing what happened 7 years ago. I was 22, pregnant, terrified, and the man I loved..." Her voice caught. She breathed through it. "The man I loved told me I was a liar, that I'd cheated on him, that the child inside me was evidence of my betrayal. Hae-won, I was homeless for 3 months." The words were glass shards. "I slept in a PC bang, used public restrooms to clean up before job interviews. I ate once a day so my baby would have enough nutrients. And when Ji-hwan was born, I held him in a charity clinic and promised him I'd never let anyone make him feel like a mistake." Tears tracked down Tae-ryung's face before he realized he was crying. 7 years of suppressed grief, guilt, rage, all of it collapsing inward. "I'm not telling you this for pity," Hae-won continued, her own eyes dry but haunted. "I'm telling you so you understand the scale of what was taken. Not just from me, from him. Ji-hwan deserved a father. He deserved to be wanted. And because of your family's control and your willingness to believe their lies over my truth, he got neither. What do you want from me?" The question was a plea. "Tell me what to do. How to make this right." Hae-won stood, moved to the window overlooking Seoul's skyline, a city she'd conquered through sheer will and survival. "I want you to prove you're not your father's puppet anymore. I want you to choose, really choose, whether Ji-hwan deserves a father who will fight for him, or whether he's better off never knowing you existed." "Of course I want to be his father. Wanting isn't enough." Her voice rose, finally cracking. "I wanted you to believe me 7 years ago. I wanted you to fight for us. I wanted you to question your family's truth instead of accepting it as gospel. But you didn't. So why should I believe you'll fight now?" The question hung between them, unanswerable, unforgivable. Tae-ryung stood, the distance between them feeling like continents. "Because I know what I've lost. And I'm willing to burn my entire world down to get it back." "Then burn it." Hae-won turned, and the look in her eyes was both challenge and grief. "Prove you're willing to destroy the empire your family built on lies. Prove Ji-hwan means more to you than power. And maybe, I'll consider letting you into his life. And you?" He stepped closer, drawn by gravity he couldn't fight. "Do I get to be in your life too?" Her laugh was broken. "I don't know if there's anything left of the person you knew. That girl died in a homeless shelter. The woman standing here, she doesn't forgive easily. She doesn't trust at all. And she certainly doesn't believe in second chances." "Then what do you believe in?" Hae-won met his gaze, and for one fragile moment, he saw past the armor to the scarred soul beneath. "I believe in consequences, and I believe people who cause damage should spend their lives repairing it." "Then let me start." Tae-ryung pulled out his phone, opened a contact, made a decision that would change everything. "My father's faction controls 40% of the syndicate's operations. If I expose the falsified records, the corruption, the manipulation, it'll fracture the organization, maybe destroy it entirely. And you're willing to do that?" He thought of Ji-hwan's eyes, of a boy who called his absence a mistake, of Hae-won, sleeping in internet cafes with a child growing inside her, believing herself abandoned. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Hae-won nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first hairline crack in the walls she'd built. "Then prove it," she said, "and we'll see if you're capable of being the man I once believed you were." The exposure came at dawn, the way executions always did in the Kang family. Tae-ryung stood in the syndicate's main conference hall, surrounded by 30 men who'd spent their lives believing blood and loyalty were synonymous. At the head of the table sat his father, face carved from granite, eyes burning with the kind of rage that preceded violence. "You're accusing me of falsifying medical records?" Myungdae's voice was glacier calm, the dangerous kind of quiet that preceded storms. "In front of the entire council? This is your strategy?" "It's not an accusation." Tae Rayong activated the projector, filling the wall with damning evidence, original medical files showing his childhood illness and complete recovery, side by side with the falsified documents claiming permanent sterility, bank transactions to doctors who'd signed off on non-existent diagnoses, testimony from a nurse his investigator had tracked down, a woman who'd been paid to alter records and had been living with the guilt for 7 years. The room erupted in murmurs. Several council members looked between father and son, confusion warring with calculation. "This was done to control me," Tae Rayong continued, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, "to ensure I remained focused on the family business without the distraction of personal relationships. 7 years ago, I rejected the woman I loved and our unborn child because I believed these lies. I destroyed 2 lives because my father valued power over truth. You think you're some kind of hero?" Myungdae stood, slamming his hands on the table. "You think exposing this makes you righteous? You're spitting on everything this family built. This family built itself on manipulation and fear." Tae Rayong's shout silenced the room. "We justify cruelty as protection. We call abuse discipline. And we sacrifice human beings on the altar of tradition because we're too cowardly to question whether our power is worth the price." One of the senior members, Han Seok-jin, cleared his throat. "If this is true, and I'm not saying it is, what do you propose?" "We fracture the family over one woman and a child who may not even—" "He's mine." Tae Rayong pulled up the genetic test results, the 99.7% paternity probability filling the screen like a verdict. "Kang Ji-hwan is my son. My family stole 7 years of his life from me. 7 years of watching him grow, of being present, of being a father. And they did it to preserve an empire I'm no longer sure deserves to exist." The room fell silent. Even Myungdae seemed momentarily struck mute. "So here's my proposal," Tae Rayong continued, each word a nail in his old life's coffin. "The council can choose: continue following leadership built on lies and control, or start rebuilding this organization into something that values truth over tradition. I'm stepping down as boss, effective immediately. I'm testifying against every illegal operation that relied on coercion rather than consent. And I'm dedicating the rest of my life to earning back what was stolen. From Haewon, from Ji-hwan, from myself." "You're destroying us," his father whispered, and for the first time ever, Tae Rayong heard genuine pain in the old man's voice. "For a woman and a child you barely know." "No." Tae Rayong met his father's eyes without flinching. "I'm destroying the version of us that deserved to be destroyed. What comes next, if anything comes next, will be built on something better than fear." He walked out of the conference hall without looking back, leaving behind the title he'd killed himself to earn, the respect he'd mistaken for love, and the empire that had cost him everything that actually mattered. Ji-hwan's school was a fortress of normalcy, primary-colored buildings, playground equipment that squeaked with use, children's laughter echoing like a language Tae Rayong had forgotten how to speak. He waited outside the gates at dismissal, a stranger among parents who knew each other's names, who exchanged small talk about homework and playdates. He felt alien here, dangerous, a predator in a place designed for innocence. When Ji-hwan emerged, backpack bouncing, his laugh reached Tae Rayong before his eyes did. The boy was with 2 friends, engaged in some elaborate game involving imaginary superpowers and dramatic sound effects. 7 years old and already so fully himself, confident, kind, unaware of the weight his existence carried. Then Ji-hwan saw him. The boy's steps slowed, recognition flickering across his face. "You're the man from the hotel," Ji-hwan said, curiosity replacing wariness. "The one Iyama said made a mistake." Tae Rayong knelt, bringing himself to eye level. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable, not just the eyes, but the shape of his nose, the way his ears stuck out slightly, the stubborn set of his jaw. This was his son. His. "I'm Tae Rayong," he said, voice rough. "And your mom is right. I made a very big mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Ji-hwan tilted his head, the gesture so achingly familiar it hurt. "Did you hurt someone?" "Yes. No point in lying. Not to this boy. Not ever again." I hurt your mother very badly, and I hurt you, even though I didn't know you yet. Ji-hwan considered this with the seriousness of someone who'd learned early that adults didn't always tell the truth. Yama says everyone makes mistakes. But the important thing is if you try to fix them. I'm trying to fix mine. Tae-ryung's throat tightened. But I don't know if I can. Some mistakes are too big. Nothing's too big if you really mean it. Ji-hwan said it with the absolute certainty of childhood faith. That's what my teacher says. She says people can change if they really, really want to. Behind them, a car door opened. Hae-won stepped out, her expression shifting from alarm to guarded recognition when she saw Tae-ryung. Ji-hwan, she called, her voice careful. Come here, please. The boy ran to his mother without hesitation, and Tae-ryung watched the way Hae-won's hands immediately went to her son's shoulders. Protective, grounding, ready to shield him from whatever threat she perceived. I wasn't trying to approach him behind your back, Tae-ryung said, standing slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. I needed to see him, to understand what I've been missing. Hae-won's eyes scanned him, taking in the exhaustion carved into his face, the slight tremor in his hands, the absence of the confident ruthlessness he'd worn like armor 3 days ago. You look like hell. I exposed my father, stepped down from the syndicate, testified against half the organization's operations. He laughed, the sound brittle. So yeah, hell's about right. Her expression flickered. Surprise, maybe something like respect. You actually did it. You said to prove I'd burn my world down. So I did. He looked at Ji-hwan, who was watching their exchange with bright, curious eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect access. But I needed you both to know I'm done being the man my father created. Whatever comes next, it'll be on my terms, built on truth. Hae-won was quiet for a long moment, her hand absently smoothing Ji-hwan's hair. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard it in 7 years. Truth is a good start, but it's only that, a start. I'll take it. He pulled out a card, not his old syndicate contact, but something new. Kang Tae-ryung, private consultant, specializing in organizational ethics and family reconciliation. If you ever decide I've earned the right to know him, to know both of you, call me. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. Hae-won took the card, studied it as if it might be another lie. But Ji-hwan spoke up, his voice small but clear. Yama, is he my dad? The world stopped. Hae-won's eyes closed briefly, pain and fear and something achingly vulnerable crossing her face. When she opened them, she looked at Tae-ryung with an expression that held 7 years of grief and the first glimmers of something that might, someday, resemble hope. Yes, she whispered. He's your father. Ji-hwan looked between them, processing this revelation with the gravity of someone whose world had just expanded in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Did you know about me? No, Tae-ryung said, kneeling again so they were face to face. I didn't know, and that's my biggest regret. Because if I had known, if I'd understood, I would have been there every single day. I would have been the first person to hold you, to see you take your first steps, to hear you laugh. But you know now, Ji-hwan said simply, so you can be there for all the other things. The innocence of it, the absolute forgiveness inherent in a child's logic, shattered something fundamental in Tae-ryung's chest. Tears he'd been holding back for days finally fell, silent and unchecked. I'd like that, he managed. If your mom says it's okay. Mother and son exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations that spoke of years of trust, of survival, of a bond nothing could break. Finally, Hae-won nodded. We'll try, she said, slowly, with boundaries. And if you ever make him doubt his worth again, if you bring your family's chaos into his life, if you choose power over his well-being, I will make your exile from the syndicate look like mercy. Understood. Tae-ryung stood, wiping his face with shaking hands. Thank you for giving me a chance I absolutely don't deserve. You're right. You don't deserve it. Hae-won's voice held steel. But Ji-hwan deserves a father who'll fight to be better. So prove you can be that man. They left together, mother and son, a unit forged in survival and love. Tae-ryung watched them go, feeling the weight of possibility settle over his shoulders, like a mantle he'd have to earn the right to wear. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at his new apartment. Modest, civilian, nothing like the penthouse he'd once commanded. Inside, a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, labels in a child's careful handwriting, Iyama, me, and Dad. Below it, a note in Haiwan's elegant script. Sunday, 2 p.m., the park near our apartment. Don't be late. Don't bring your past, just bring yourself. Tae-ryung taped the drawing to his refrigerator, his first decoration in a space that felt less like exile and more like the beginning of something he'd lost the right to name but was desperate to build. For the first time in 7 years, he fell asleep without the weight of lies crushing his chest. And when he woke Sunday morning, the first thing he saw was that crayon drawing. Imperfect, innocent, impossibly hopeful. A future. Fragile and uncertain, but real. Sunday arrived wrapped in autumn gold, the kind of perfect soul afternoon that felt borrowed from someone else's life. Tae-ryung stood outside Yeouido Park at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, dressed in civilian clothes that felt like a costume. Dark jeans, a simple sweater, sneakers instead of Italian leather. He looked normal, harmless, nothing like the man who'd once ordered executions with the same detachment others used to order coffee. When Haewon and Ji-hwan appeared, the boy was wearing a dinosaur print hoodie and carrying a soccer ball under one arm. He spotted Tae-ryung immediately, his face lighting up with uncomplicated excitement. "You came!" Ji-hwan ran ahead of his mother, stopping just short of Tae-ryung with the sudden shyness of a child remembering this person was still essentially a stranger. "I promised I would," Tae-ryung said, crouching to his level. "And I don't break promises. Not anymore." Haewon reached them, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes watchful. She'd dressed casually, too. Jeans, a cream sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders in a way that made her look younger, more like the woman he'd known before he'd destroyed everything. "Ground rules," she said without preamble. "No talk about the past in front of Ji-hwan. No mentions of your family or the syndicate. Today, you're just Tae-ryung, a person getting to know his son. Can you do that?" "Yes." He stood, meeting her gaze with something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Where should we start?" Ji-hwan answered by kicking the soccer ball toward him. Not hard, just an invitation. "Iyama says you used to play when you were my age. Is that true?" "I did." Tae-ryung trapped the ball with practiced ease, muscle memory from a childhood that felt like it belonged to someone else. "I wasn't very good, though." "That's okay, I'm not good either." Ji-hwan's honesty was disarming. "But it's still fun." They played. For 2 hours, they just played. Tae-ryung passed the ball to his son, watched him stumble and laugh and try again. Ji-hwan narrated an elaborate story where they were competing in the World Cup, complete with imaginary crowds and commentary. Haewon sat on a nearby bench, reading a book but glancing up every few minutes, her posture gradually relaxing as she saw Ji-hwan's genuine joy. At one point, the ball rolled too far, and Tae-ryung jogged after it alongside Ji-hwan. They reached it at the same time, both bending down, and their eyes met. Amber brown mirrored in miniature. "You do have my eyes," Ji-hwan said, wonder in his voice. "Iyama showed me pictures, but it's different seeing them for real." "She has pictures of me?" Tae-ryung's voice caught. "Just one, from before." Ji-hwan tilted his head, studying him with unsettling perception. "You look sadder in person. Did something bad happen?" "How do you tell a 7-year-old that you happened? That your own stupidity and cowardice created the sadness you carry like a second skeleton?" "Something bad did happen," Tae-ryung said carefully. "But I'm trying to make it better. That's why I'm here." Ji-hwan seemed to accept this. He picked up the ball, then surprised Tae-ryung by reaching for his hand, small fingers wrapping around larger ones with complete trust. "Iyama says trying is the most important part," the boy said as they walked back toward the bench. "She says people who keep trying, even when things are hard, are the bravest people." Tae-ryung had to stop walking, had to breathe through the sudden overwhelming rush of emotion. This child, his child, was offering him grace he absolutely didn't deserve, with the kind of open-hearted generosity that comes from being raised by someone who understood suffering but chose kindness anyway. "Your mother is right," he managed. "She's right about a lot of things." When they returned to the bench, Haewon had put away her book. She watched them approach, father and son, hands linked, and something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first acknowledgement that this might actually be possible. "Iyama, can we get ice cream?" Ji-hwan asked, still holding Tai Ryong's hand. "I want the dinosaur cone." "The dinosaur cone has chocolate and strawberry," Hai-won said, smiling at her son with such pure affection it made Tai Ryong's chest ache. "You'll get it all over your face." "That's the best part." They went to a small ice cream shop near the park, one of those family-run places with mismatched chairs and a menu written in colorful chalk. Ji-hwan ordered his dinosaur cone with the seriousness of someone negotiating international treaties, while Tai Ryong and Hai-won stood awkwardly side by side at the counter. "He's amazing," Tai Ryong said quietly, watching Ji-hwan chat with the elderly woman behind the register. "You raised someone extraordinary." "I raised him to be kind despite knowing the world isn't always kind back." Haewon's voice held both pride and pain. "I never told him you rejected us. I said you didn't know about him because of complicated circumstances. I didn't want him carrying anger that wasn't his to bear. You could have told him the truth, made him hate me. I thought about it." Her honesty was startling. "On the bad days, when I was so tired I couldn't stand, when I had to choose between electricity and food, when I watched him ask why other kids had dads and he didn't, I thought about poisoning him against you, making him understand what you'd taken from us. Why didn't you?" She turned to look at him fully, and he saw the strength it had taken to survive, to rebuild, to not let bitterness consume her. "Because I didn't want him to grow up believing his father was a monster. I wanted him to have the possibility of you being better than what you were, even if I didn't believe it myself." Tae-ryong had no words. He could only stand there, humbled by a mercy he couldn't comprehend. Ji-hwan returned with his ice cream, already dripping, face split in a chocolate-smeared grin. They sat outside on a small patio, and for 30 minutes they were just a family. Talking about dinosaurs and soccer and a school project about planets. Ordinary, impossible, real. But reality has a way of intruding. Tai Ryong's phone buzzed. A message from Sang Min. "Emergency. Your father's faction is moving against you. They've issued a formal challenge to your testimony. Meeting tonight. They want blood." His hands tightened around the phone. Haewon noticed immediately. "What is it?" Her voice dropped, protective instincts activating. "My family." He kept his voice low, away from Ji-hwan's hearing. "They're not accepting my resignation quietly. There's going to be a confrontation." "When?" "Tonight." Haewon's expression hardened, the CEO returning in the space of a heartbeat. "Will it be dangerous?" "Probably." She stood abruptly, gathering their things with efficient movements. "Ji-hwana, we need to go." "But we just got here." "Now, baby." The edge in her voice made the boy comply immediately, confusion replacing his earlier joy. Tae-ryong followed them to the parking lot, panic rising in his chest. "Haewon, wait!" "No." She turned on him, eyes blazing. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You said you were leaving your past behind, but it's following you. And I will not let it touch my son. I'm handling it. You're handling it by walking into a confrontation that could get you killed?" Her voice rose. 7 years of fear and fury finally breaking free. "What happens to Ji-hwan if you die tonight? What happens to this fragile thing we're trying to build? Did you think about that? Or were you too busy playing hero?" Ji-hwan had started crying, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from happiness to conflict. Tae-ryong knelt beside him, heart shattering. "Hey, it's okay." "You're fighting," Ji-hwan sobbed. "I thought you were trying to be better, but you're making Iyama sad." I know, and I'm sorry." Tae-ryong looked up at Haewon, saw the wall rebuilding itself in her eyes, brick by painful brick. "Please, give me one more chance. Let me face my family tonight and end this. Completely. Then I'll be free. We'll be free." "You can't promise that." Her voice shook. "You can't promise you'll survive. You can't promise they won't come after us next. You're asking me to trust you when trust is the thing you already broke. I'm asking you to believe I'm willing to die to make this right." The words were raw, absolute truth. "Because if I don't face them tonight, they'll never stop. They'll always be a shadow over anything we try to build. But if I end this, if I make them understand I'm never coming back, then maybe we have a chance." Haewon looked at her crying son, then back at Tae-ryong, and he saw the impossible weight of the choice she was facing. Protect Ji-hwan from potential future danger by cutting Tae-ryong out now, or risk believing he could actually win this fight. "If you die tonight," she said, voice like broken glass, "I will hate you forever." Not for dying. For making him love you and then leaving? "I won't die." He stood, looked her in the eyes with every ounce of conviction he possessed. "I promise you, I will come back. And when I do, I'll be free of them, completely." She held his gaze for an eternity, then pulled out her phone. "What's the address of this meeting?" "Why?" "Because if you're walking into hell, I'm putting a security detail on the perimeter. Not to help you, to make sure if things go wrong, there's evidence for the police." Her smile was sharp as knives. "I didn't build an empire by hoping for the best. I planned for the worst." Despite everything, Tae-ryung almost laughed. "You're terrifying." "I'm a mother protecting her child." She wiped Ji-hwan's tears with gentle hands, then looked back at Tae-ryung. "Go face your demons. But if you don't walk out of that meeting alive, I'm burning whatever's left of your family's organization to the ground. Consider that motivation." He nodded, turned to leave, but Ji-hwan's voice stopped him. "Dad? Dad." The word was a defibrillator to Tae-ryung's barely functioning heart. "Yeah, buddy? Come back, okay? I want to play soccer again." Tae-ryung knelt one more time, pulled his son into a careful hug. The first time he'd held him, the first of what he desperately hoped would be thousands. "I'll come back, I promise." He left them there, Haewon's hand on Ji-hwan's shoulder, both watching him walk toward a reckoning 7 years in the making. And for the first time in his life, Tae-ryung understood what people meant when they said they had something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. But more importantly, something worth living for. The meeting took place in the same conference hall where Tae-ryung had exposed his father 3 days ago. But tonight the room felt different, charged with violence barely contained beneath expensive suits and forced civility. 30 men sat around the table, his father at the head, expression carved from stone. Council members who'd watched Tae-ryung grow up, who'd taught him how to negotiate, intimidate, destroy. And in the corners, younger members, enforcers whose loyalty was to power, not people. Tae-ryung entered alone. No guards, no weapons, just the truth and a willingness to face whatever came next. "You're late," Myungdae said, his voice arctic. "I was with my son." Tae-ryung took his seat at the opposite end of the table, a deliberate positioning, not as heir, but as equal, or adversary. Learning how to be a father. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several members exchanged glances, some sympathetic, most calculating. Han Seok-jin spoke first, his tone diplomatic but edged. "You've put us in an impossible position, Tae-ryung. Your testimony has drawn police attention. Federal investigators are requesting interviews. You've made us vulnerable." "I've made you accountable," Tae-ryung corrected. "There's a difference." "Accountability will put us in prison." One of the younger members shouted, "You betrayed your family for a woman and a bastard child!" The room exploded. Tae-ryung was out of his seat before conscious thought, slamming the speaker against the wall with a forearm across his throat. "Call my son a bastard again. Please, give me a reason." Guns appeared. Half a dozen men rising, weapons drawn, safety protocols abandoned in favor of raw instinct. "Enough!" Myungdae's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone sit! Now!" Slowly, reluctantly, the room obeyed. Tae-ryung released the gasping man, returned to his seat, hands steady despite the adrenaline singing through his veins. "This is exactly why I'm leaving," Tae-ryung said into the tense silence. "This world where children are called bastards because their parents didn't follow the right protocol. Where love is weakness and truth is betrayal. I don't want this anymore." "You think you get to just leave?" His father's voice was quiet, the most dangerous kind. "You were born into this family. You carry our name, our legacy. You don't get to abandon that because you developed a conscience. Watch me." Myungdae stood slowly, every movement deliberate. He walked around the table until he stood directly in front of his son, and for the first time in Tae-ryung's memory, his father looked genuinely uncertain. "I did what I thought was right," the old man said, and there was something almost pleading in his voice. "I protected you from distraction, from weakness. I made you strong. You made me cruel." Tae-ryung stood to meet him at eye level. "You taught me that power matters more than people. That control is love. That lies are acceptable if they serve your purpose. And when I needed a father to teach me how to be human, You gave me lessons in how to be a tyrant instead. And yet you thrived. Myungdae's voice hardened. You became the youngest boss in our history, respected, feared, everything I raised you to be. I became empty. The admission echoed in the silent room. I had power, yes, respect, fear, all of it. But I was hollow. And when I finally had the chance to have something real, someone who loved me, a child who shared my blood, I destroyed it because you taught me to value the wrong things. He turned to address the entire council, voice carrying the weight of 7 years' grief and 7 days' clarity. I'm not asking for permission to leave. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm telling you, I'm done. The Kang family's empire will continue or collapse without me, and I've made peace with either outcome. Because across town, there's a woman who survived my worst and still gave me a chance. There's a boy who calls me dad, even though I haven't earned it. And I will spend every remaining day of my life being worthy of them. You'll have nothing, one council member said. No money, no power, no protection. I'll have everything that matters. Tae-ryung smiled, and it felt like the first genuine expression he'd worn in years. I'll have the chance to watch my son grow up, to earn his mother's trust, to build a life where my success isn't measured in fear, but in love. His father stared at him as if looking at a stranger. Perhaps he was. The man standing here was not the obedient weapon Myungdae had crafted. He was something new, something better, something that terrified the old man because it existed outside his control. If you walk out that door, Myungdae said, voice shaking, you are no longer my son. Tae-ryung had known this moment was coming, had prepared for it during sleepless nights and agonizing meditations. But hearing the words still felt like a blade between his ribs. I stopped being your son the day you decided lying to me was acceptable, Tae-ryung said quietly. Tonight, I'm just choosing to acknowledge it. He walked toward the door. No one stopped him. No one spoke. The silence was a tomb, and he was the only one leaving it alive. At the threshold, he paused. He looked back one final time at the man who'd raised him, ruined him, and ultimately freed him through sheer toxicity. I hope someday you understand, Tae-ryung said, that the strength you wanted me to have, I found it, just not the way you expected. He left. The door closed behind him with a finality that felt like birth and death occurring simultaneously. Outside, Haiwan's security detail waited in unmarked cars. The head of her team, Park Min-jung, lowered her window. She told us to make sure you survived. Congratulations. You did. It's not over yet, Tae-ryung said, pulling out his phone. One final call to make.
If you made it to the end, you already understand this isn't just another story. What you watched here is only a fragment. The full experience lives in 20 complete audio episodes, carefully told, with every detail, every emotion, every turning point. There are no ads, no interruptions, and nothing was removed like it is on YouTube. You can listen anytime on your phone with total privacy, inside the members-only area. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment to unlock the full story and continue listening immediately.
To the federal prosecutor who'd been investigating his family for 3 years. This is Kang Tae-ryung. I'm ready to provide complete testimony. Bank records, operation details, everything. On one condition, full immunity for my testimony and witness protection if needed. Not for me. For a woman named Yoon Haiwan and her son. The prosecutor's voice was sharp with victory and surprise. Done. We'll have agents at your location within the hour. Tae-ryung hung up, looked at the building behind him, his entire past contained in concrete and corruption, and felt nothing but relief. His phone buzzed. A message from Haiwan. Ji-hwan is asking if you're okay. Are you? He typed back, I'm free, finally, completely. Can I come see you both? The response took 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like hours. Then, our address is below. We'll be waiting. The apartment was modest. Nothing like Tae-ryung's former penthouse or Haewon's corporate office. But it was warm, lived in. The walls covered in Ji-hwan's artwork, the furniture worn but comfortable, the kitchen smelling like someone had recently made dinner. Home. This was what home looked like. Ji-hwan answered the door still in his dinosaur pajamas, eyes bright with relief. You came back. I promised I would. Tae-ryung knelt, accepted his son's enthusiastic hug with trembling hands. and I keep my promises now. Haewon stood in the hallway, arms crossed, expression guarded but eyes suspiciously bright. You look different. I am different. He stood, Ji-hwan still attached to his hand. I testified. Against all of them. My father, the council, every operation I knew about. I gave the prosecutors everything. Her eyes widened. That's permanent, he finished. There's no going back. The family will never take me back. I've burned that bridge to ash. And you're okay with that? Tae Rayong looked around the small apartment, at the evidence of 7 years of Haewon's survival, of Ji-hwan's childhood without him, of the life they'd built from nothing while he'd been playing emperor in a castle of lies. I'm more than okay, he said. I'm exactly where I should have been all along. Ji-hwan tugged his hand. Does this mean you can come to my school thing on Friday? We're doing presentations about families and I want to say my dad is coming. Tae-ryung's voice broke. I'll be there, front row. You promise? I promise. Haewon moved closer, the three of them forming a small circle in the narrow hallway. This isn't going to be easy, she said, addressing Tae Rayong with the honesty that had always defined her. I still have nightmares about the worst days. I still don't fully trust you. And Ji-hwan, he deserves consistency. Presence. Not grand gestures, but daily proof that you choose him. I know. Tae-ryung met her gaze without flinching. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness or for us to be a perfect family overnight. I'm asking for the chance to show up, every day, in whatever capacity you'll allow, and to prove that the man standing here, he's not the one who hurt you. He's the one who learned from it. Haewon studied him for a long moment, and he saw her waging the same internal war she'd probably fought every day since he'd reappeared. Risk belief and potential devastation, or choose safety and guaranteed solitude. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but we start slow. Family dinners twice a week, supervised visits, therapy, for you individually and eventually for all of us together. And if you miss even one commitment, if you prioritize anything over Ji-hwan's stability, we're done. Permanently. Understood. It wasn't forgiveness, it was probation, but it was more than he deserved, and he'd protect it like the precious, fragile thing it was. Ji-hwan, oblivious to the weight of the adult conversation, pulled them both toward the living room. Can we watch a movie? All of us together? Haewon and Tae Rayong exchanged a look over their son's head. Complicated, painful, tentatively hopeful. Yeah, Haewon said softly. We can do that. They settled on the couch, Ji-hwan between them, chattering about dinosaurs while some animated movie played on the television. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Tae Rayong felt Haewon's hand brush against his on the cushion between them. Not holding, not yet, just acknowledging, touching, allowing the possibility of connection. Halfway through the movie, Ji-hwan fell asleep, his head on Tae Rayong's shoulder, small hand clutched around his father's larger one. He trusts you already, Haewon whispered, watching her son sleep with the fierce protectiveness that had kept them both alive. Don't make me regret allowing that. I won't. Tae Rayong carefully adjusted his position so Ji-hwan was more comfortable. I swear on everything I have left, I won't. They sat in silence, the movie playing forgotten, the weight of 7 years' separation slowly transforming into something that might someday resemble healing. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was hope. And hope, Tae Rayong was learning, was the most dangerous and necessary thing in the world. 3 months later, the school gymnasium was packed with parents, teachers, and excited children. Tae Rayong sat in the third row, Haewon beside him, their hands loosely intertwined in a gesture that still felt new but increasingly natural. On stage, Ji-hwan stood at the microphone, note cards trembling slightly in his small hands. The presentation topic, my family's story. My name is Kang Ji-hwan, he began, voice small but gaining strength. And my family is different. For a long time, it was just me and my mom. She's the strongest person I know. She built a whole company and took care of me all by herself. Haewon's grip on Tae Rayong's hand tightened, tears already forming. But this year, I got a dad, Ji-hwan continued. He made big mistakes before I was born. He hurt my mom. But he's trying really hard to be better. And my teacher says people who admit their mistakes and try to fix them are the bravest kind. Ji-hwan looked directly at them in the audience, his smile bright and uncomplicated. So now we're learning how to be a family. It's not perfect. Sometimes my parents still look sad. But we eat dinner together, and my dad comes to my soccer games, and my mom laughs more now. And I think that's what family is. People who keep trying, even when it's hard. The audience applauded, but Tae-ryung barely heard it through the emotion constricting his throat. Beside him, Haewon was openly crying, and when their eyes met, he saw not just pain or fear, but genuine, terrifying, beautiful possibility. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Yeah," he whispered back, kissing her temple with reverent gentleness. "We are." But that night, as Tae-ryung drove home alone, his phone rang from an unknown number. He answered. A voice he hadn't heard in 3 months, cold, familiar, devastating. "Hello, son," Kang Myung-dae said. "We need to talk. About the child." Tae-ryung's blood turned to ice. "What about Ji-hwan?" "I've been watching, learning. And I've realized he's a Kang, which means he belongs to this family, whether you want that or not." The line went dead. Tae-ryung sat frozen in his car, the parking lot suddenly feeling like a cage, and one thought screamed through his mind. It's not over. It's only just beginning. Did you feel the tension? The fear? The impossible hope? Tae-ryung thought he was free. But his father just made a move that could destroy everything. What does Kang Myung-dae want with Ji-hwan? Will Haewon's empire be strong enough to protect her son? And can Tae-ryung finally choose his family over his blood? If this story hit you in the heart, we need your help. 20 comments, plus 4,000 views. Chark episode 02. Drops today. Comment. What would you do if you were Tae-ryung? Watch until the end so YouTube knows you're invested. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the real war begins. Because I promise you, episode 02 will shatter everything you think you know about this family. The clock is ticking. Let's make this happen. Together.